So, how's it going, guys? Today, I'm going to give you the 3D swing analysis of Justin Thomas and his driver swing. And I'm going to show you 3 lessons that you could take away from his driver swing, going from setup all the way to his follow through, that you can implement to increase the yards in your driver because Justin Thomas is small in stature, however, he bombs the ball. So, we're going to start at setup. So, the first thing that I want you to notice, if we look at the 3D on the right, is these 3 different lines. So the light blue line is the middle of his forehead, the dark blue is the middle of his chest, and the yellow is the middle of his pelvis. And as we can see, the middle of his chest and the middle of his forehead is behind the middle of his pelvis. So what that tells us is that he is set up in an inclined way with axis tilt and has his head more behind the ball than his pelvis. So that tells us that he's set up correctly to launch the ball up in the air, right? Because we're hitting up on the driver because it's on a tee and we're trying to reduce the amount of spin that we create, right? So probably in the 2000s range so we can have high launch and low spin. And the parameter that we need is we need to have this setup where our upper body is inclined slightly behind the middle of our pelvis so we can be in a position to launch the golf ball in the air instead of with an iron hitting down on it. And the number we can see here with 3D is the sway gap number, right? So if we look here at sway gap, it is negative 1.6. So the gap between the middle of his chest and the middle of his pelvis is about 1.5 inches away from the target. And that is what we want to do at the setup of the driver. Then next, if we go to the backswing, I want you to look more closely at his backswing when he loads in the takeaway. So as you can see, the gap between these 2 lines, the middle of his chest and the middle of his pelvis, starts to increase. But I want you to notice that during this phase right here, it starts to get smaller. So what is that telling us? It tells us that Justin Thomas is already recentering his pelvis and his chest at this position, which is just before a lead arm parallel. And the lesson for us is that most times amateurs load to the right side, but load too long and too slow. We can see here that Justin Thomas has loaded to the right side, but he doesn't do it for long because he starts to recenter already at this position. And we can see here, if we go back to a setup and we go down the pelvis way and chest way, we'll see what happens. So as he keeps going, right, we can see that the pelvis way and chest way gets to be more negative. But then I want you to watch as it gets smaller. So look at the pelvis way. The pelvis way all of a sudden starts to get smaller in this small moment to negative 0.9 to negative 0.8. And then you can notice also with the chest way that it gets smaller slightly too. So it goes from 2.6 back to 2.5, 2.4. So that tells us that he's starting to recenter his body. And why that is important is because there are 2 different terms, center of pressure and center of mass. His center of pressure currently right now is on his right foot, is on his right side. However, his center of mass is still relatively centered because he was able to recenter his body. And that is going to help him to be able to still load to the left side in the downswing and not have to work so hard to get back to the golf ball. So that is the second lesson that we want to take. Then from here, as we keep going to the top, then it starts to increase even more. But as he goes towards the top, then we can see how all of a sudden, look at the chest way. The chest way starts to get smaller. So again, he's recentering again, and he's not even fully at his position at the top of the backswing. And then now we'll start to see the pelvis to do the same thing. So what that also tells us is that we need to recenter more than once in the phase of the backswing so we can prepare for the downswing. Because if we load to the right the whole time during the backswing, then in the downswing, we won't have enough time to get to our left side. And what he's specifically doing here is recentering his rib cage, and then his rib cage allows his pelvis to also recenter as well. And then the last lesson that I want you to take away is as he goes in the downswing is that this as the chest sway, as the pelvis sway gets towards the target, which is him shifting to his left side, I want you to notice the chest sway is getting away from the target. So again, now he's increasing that gap of behind the ball, because we can see his sway gap between his pelvis and his chest is negative 6.6 here at impact. And so what that tells us is most amateurs are also loading to the left side, but at the same time also loading their chest to the left side, which is getting too far in front of the ball. And we know we're trying to hit up on the golf ball with the driver, so we need to have the ability to load onto our left side while also at the same time getting our chest to move back. So he's separating the center of his pelvis and the center of his chest. And so that helps him to launch the golf ball here, because we can see how now he's in a position that's inclined for him to hit up on the golf ball. So those 3 lessons I'm going to break down to you to show you how you can specifically implement this to hit drives like Justin Thomas. I hate to admit this, that I was once in your shoes, where I was scrolling on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok on the latest golf tip to help me improve my golf game. Did that work for me? Maybe for about a few days or a week, but it never helped me improve long term. So what I learned, and what you need to learn, is that you need to know what your body can do physically, and also what your most optimal golf swing is to help you improve your golf game. So how does that come into picture with me? Well, I will help you to understand your most optimal golf swing using both a TPI physical assessment to see what you can do physically, along with Sportsbox AI technology to help you to understand what your body is currently doing, and then also tracking the progress of specific parameters that we focus on to help you to improve your golf game. Ready to take action to improve your golf game on a long-term basis? Comment down below the word assess and let's get started. So the first lesson that we can learn from Justin Thomas's driver swing is having the proper setup to be able to launch the golf ball with the driver. So how we do that is this: is all I want you to simply do is to set up and then take your trail hand and have it in the middle of your thigh, and I want you to slide it down to your knee, to the top of your knee. And then now you're in a position to have your spine, have the middle of your chest behind the middle of your pelvis, right? So that's the first thing, because since the ball is on the tee, if I were to set up with my chest in the same position as the middle of my pelvis, we can see how now my shoulder, the tilt of my shoulders are inclined as if they're going to hit down like an iron, although we're trying to hit up with the driver. And that's what leads amateurs to, 1, slices, but also 2, not being able to get the ball up in the air and losing distance just from setup. So that's the first thing. Then the second thing is being able to recenter the chest and the pelvis sooner in the backswing. Now, it's only for a moment, as we saw in Justin Thomas's swing. So this is what he did. So as I mentioned, there are 2 terms: center of mass and center of pressure. So our center of mass is here, right in line with the middle of our sternum, and our center of pressure is just within the middle of our feet. So if I were to shift right and load to the right side, now both my center of mass and center of pressure are moving to the right side, right? But then we saw Justin Thomas start to recenter his chest as he started to keep loading to the right, right? And that happened in the phase when he started from just pure rotation to extending and side bending. So again, he goes from loading to his right side, and then now recentering his chest for a moment, and then from there he still keeps going up to the top and moving away from the target. So the lesson for us is that it is not just purely loading onto the right side, right? Because if I were to load onto the right side forever, right, then now my center of pressure and my center of mass is to the right. And then we're loading for too long on our right side, so then now I have to work twice as hard just to get back to the golf ball. Instead, if we get that pressure moving to the right and then start to recenter earlier, then now as we come down, it'll be easier to get onto our left side. So that's the second thing that Justin Thomas is able to do to be able to hit the ball farther, although being smaller in stature. And then, so as he keeps going to the top, right? So he loads initially to the right, then starts to recenter his chest and pelvis a little bit, then keeps going and loading to the right. And then now he has another recentering where he gets the chest to move more towards the target. And then along with that, his pelvis goes with it to help him in a transition to move on to his left side. So he has two recenterings. And most golfers don't even recenter at all. So it just shows that it's not just simplistic as just loading onto the right and loading onto the left. You need to be able to recenter your body in position to prepare to move onto your left side and to hit that driver up in the air efficiently. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to take this, put this club down, and I want you to do a drill. And it's all going to be focused on your body, because the key in which Justin Thomas is able to recenter is through his rib cage, right? And the reason why that is because if I move my rib cage to the right, eventually it's going to pull my pelvis. And then as well, if I move my rib cage to the left, eventually it's going to pull my pelvis as well, because my body's all connected. So I want you to do this drill. Put your hands across your chest, and without moving your pelvis, I want you to move your rib cage and shift it to the right. So this way. Then I want you to do the same to the left. And I want you to do this a few times to help you to be able to understand how to get that rib cage to move. And as you can see, just like in Justin Thomas's swing, the middle of my chest is separating from the middle of my pelvis. And so if I were to simulate this with the golf club, right? So in my initial backswing, my rib cage moves away, right? Then that brings the club this way. Then he starts to recenter again. So now I'm moving back to the middle. Then he starts to move away again, this way, and then he recenters again. So being able to recenter is important and separate the middle of your chest from the middle of your pelvis. And then in a downswing, this is the key, is that in his downswing, he starts to recenter and then get onto his left side. But as he moves towards the target with his pelvis, his chest is moving back. And this is the key to getting the most optimal, efficient club head speed, is we need to be able to move the chest away from the middle of the pelvis in order to, one, hit up on the ball, and two, release the club entirely. Because a lot of times the amateurs, we see that they move at the same time and then they're hitting down on it and have a chicken wing or not releasing the golf club. So if we apply the recentering of that rib cage and separating, once he shifts this way, he keeps moving his pelvis, but then moves the center of his chest back this way. So again, if we were to be able to move our rib cage and separate it from the middle of our pelvis, then that's how we're going to be able to develop those patterns just like Justin Thomas. So this drill is called the rib cage sway drill. All you do is have these little movements where you sway your rib cage back and forth, and that's going to allow you to apply the same thing. Because if I go to the backswing, I separate my rib cage and move it away from my middle of my pelvis, right? Here. Then slightly recenter again. Then move away again. Then recenter. Then move forward. And then separate again. So there are 3 different times when that happens. So that is the key to be able to hit the ball efficiently and get the most out of your driver. So apply that drill, and then let me know how it goes down in the comments. And let me know any more content that you want me to show you guys and you need help with.